Well, thank you. And Jody, as folks know, is a friend of mine. But I have to tell him, after listening to that depressing assessment, I wouldn't even want to wake up in the morning. Oh, doom and gloom, doom and gloom. Thank God it isn't true. Here's the reality. The greatest economic recovery from COVID of any major economy on earth is that of the United States of America. An unemployment rate today, the lowest it's been since 1969. We are the envy of the world right now. And even inflation, which we all admit has been a challenge. No, it was not transitory, as Jay Powell kept telling us. But even that, the remarkable progress in the United States, 9 consecutive months, inflation has dropped. We have a better inflation picture here in the United States than all of our peer countries in Europe, as well as the average of OECD nations. In fact, if anything, it's getting a little bit worse in some of those major economies in Europe, while the United States, it continues to improve. Just 2 hearings ago, not you, but sitting in that chair was Mark Zandi, the chief economist of Moody's, who told us in this hearing room that by late 2024, we should be back to normal in that 2% range on inflation, which of course was caused not by any domestic legislation in the United States. It wasn't anything that passed here that caused inflation worldwide. It was, of course, turning the spigot back on, essentially, after COVID. So this has been a remarkable period for our economy, a resilience that even the experts at the Congressional Budget Office, and I respect them all and the important work that they do on a nonpartisan basis, but this has far exceeded their best expectations. They didn't think we would return to an unemployment rate this low for the rest of the decade. So let's make sure we do not do anything in Congress to jeopardize this remarkable record of the last 2.5 years. So the good news is that there is no reason for this sort of pessimism and doom and gloom. We should be talking about ways that we can sustain this growth while at the same time acknowledging that, particularly as we look at the projections for the next decade, the national debt is a challenge. Now let's just talk about spending for a second. You know, it's interesting to hear the other side talk a good game about spending and national debt. They had full power just 5 years ago. 5, 6 years ago, 2017, 2018, Republican president, Republican House, Republican Senate. And what did they do? Increase spending. And what happened to the deficit? The biggest single jump in the deficit in a growing economy in American history, all as a result of the TCJA, the Trump tax cuts. The tax cuts, 83% of which went to the richest 1%. So forgive me if I'm a little skeptical that those on the other side are now so concerned about deficit and debt. Although I will exempt, actually, our chairman from this. To his credit, in a bipartisan fashion, he has pointed out that, frankly, spending has increased under both sides when in charge. The difference is on the revenue side. The difference is when Democrats have been in charge, we have attempted to tackle deficit and debt by ensuring that we receive more, frankly, a fair share from the richest 1%. But when the other side is in charge, they do not have that same approach. In fact, even now, when the conversation is taking place about reducing deficit and reducing debt, there are those on the other side that are pushing to make the Trump tax cuts permanent, which would add $3.5 trillion more to the national debt. So give me a break. There's no concern about deficit and debt on the vast majority of those on the other side. They just want to continue the massive tax giveaways to the top 1% and the richest corporations. And they are willing to use the excuse of deficit and debt to cut important investments that so many of the American people benefit from. Finally, I will say, because trying to stay within the time limit, some of the things that are being talked about right now and that actually passed the House a few weeks ago in the Republican bill would have a devastating impact on our economy. You don't have to believe any Democratic talking points. Just look at the nonpartisan analysis from Moody's. 800,000 fewer jobs by the end of next year if their bill were to become law, a substantially increased risk of a recession if their bill would become law, and all sorts of individual cuts that I recited last session, and will be happy to repeat later, again, if we get the opportunity in this hearing. So that, in a nutshell, is where we stand right now in our economy. We need to stand up and continue those policies that have worked, and the last thing we need to do is to pursue any policies that would jeopardize this remarkable job record. With that, I yield back.